you for a webinar. At Proof, we're now open. The showroom at Ion is open and ready to welcome you. We have added a lot of new stock to the floor, and it's actually ready for immediate delivery. Today, we have our special guest, Luis De Oliveria, who is the founder. We're so excited that his beautiful brand that he created, it's going to be part of the floor setup here at Ion. Without further ado, I'll just have Luis take us in this beautiful imaginary trip to see their beautiful creations.
Hello, everyone. Sorry about that lag. And thank you, Marcella. It's a real pleasure to be with you and to share our summer 2020 keynote address in a special version just for our friends from Proof. And thank you for joining us all the way from Singapore. Let me share my screen with you. And it's the very, very first time someone wave at me if you can see a cat. Yeah, you can see the cat. Brilliant. So this is the first time that we've ever started a presentation with the help of a cat. And I hope you enjoyed the next 30 to 40 minutes. I've got 3 main messages to share with you, and each one takes about 10 minutes. So bear with me and let's enjoy this trip together. So in 2020, things are different and we have to adapt. I think Espada has been looking for many years at how to release new products in a way that engages people. And we've favored smaller, intimate events in person. Sadly, that's just not going to happen now, and we're not all entirely sure when we will be able to return to that world. But the alternative to what we used to do is to look at product launches as smaller, more bite-sized events to create that sense of occasion, but also to keep you engaged over the year. We think that there's an opportunity for up to 4 times a year that we can meet you this way. So if you have to leave at any point during this conversation, we'll see you again in September or in early October. I just want to share with you an event that we put on a year ago, just to give you a little bit of perspective. It's going to give me also a little bit of time to gather my thoughts as we rush into this presentation. And this was our event in Lisbon, and we hope one day that we'll be able to share with you this kind of fun and emotion in Singapore. So just bear with me whilst I share with you a second screen, and I'm going to give you a minute of video to keep you entertained and allow a few guests to join us as time goes by.
Let's pretend this never happened.
So with your permission, we're going to return back to the keynote. It's a real challenge to tap into the excitement and emotion of those in-person events with the help of, dramatic performance. The home really comes to life. But let's have a go. Let's look at 2020. So I want to share with you our agenda. It's been growing over the years. I think at some point it's almost going to look like a manifesto. But the performance that I shared with you a moment ago was all about exploring what we call the places of the home. These are, places that we know very well, a place to eat and to sleep and to rest and to work, which we've all used and which we attach enormous emotional significance to. But there's other things that matter a lot to us as well. And as you can see, hopefully in the slide that I've put in front of you, it is our obligation to reduce our carbon footprint and to focus on longevity. And I think Espada has made huge strides on that front. It's also our objective to complement arts and crafts everywhere. We are not the competitor of a local craftsman. We complement their efforts and we admire their efforts no matter where they are. And we're all about rejecting consumerism to promote more thoughtful buying. And so it doesn't sound like we're all no fun. We really do believe in the pursuit of beauty. And so when you look at our events, we're trying to touch you on all these levels, not just one. And just to recap a few recent events that are relevant and that I want to share with you at this point. We have, over the last year, worked very hard to reduce waste, and we've managed to ship now products on 4 weeks. By the time they get to Singapore, it does take longer, but I just want you to know that we have managed to create very special objects in what is a relatively short amount of time. Then we have a program called Universal Finishes. This means that we've simplified all the options across our entire product line to make it easier for you guys to specify products, in the sense that every finish that you see on one product is almost guaranteed to be available in any other product that we make. We've made huge moves in terms of running our entire factory off solar power. This involved not only installing capacity, but looking at how efficient we could be. And earlier this year, we moved to all paper packaging, eliminating the last remains of polyurethane or plastic-based packaging, which were used for many years. And I do encourage you as well to look at our launches earlier this year from Jason Miller and Matthew Houghton. So let's get on with Tales from Strange Times. If you have a moment, you're more than welcome to do it now. Visit our Instagram page or visit Proof's Instagram, where you will see the 6 animations that I will share with you in a second. The event ran for a week. We are now in the 2nd week of the event, since our new products will be released on the 10th of July. During this current week, we are sharing with you scenes from our factory as we made many of the pieces that appear in this launch. I hope you enjoy. It's a very intimate portrait. In this particular case, we did not hire a camera team. We had our own colleagues film each other as they made the different pieces of furniture. So I hope you enjoy that. But the launch consists of 5 new products, 1 new designer, and 6 animations. The latest Espada product is an intangible one. And let's see if you like it. Now, Strange Times, the title speaks for itself. These are not normal times. The masks that appear on the faces of every single one of our colleagues now are indicative of how different things feel. And yet, we go about our routines just as we did last year. So when we created this event, we really wanted to reflect on what all of us have lived through over the last 4 months. It's absolutely impossible to avoid it, and it'd be foolish not to refer to it. And what we did was to look at the home and to look at how we have spent time at home over the last 4 months. And, we found new places. They're not just places to eat and rest and sleep. We found places where we do a new variety of things. And if you look at each one of the 1-minute animations on Instagram, you will hopefully smile and it will provoke thought. We do believe the home now is a place to create. It always has been a place where we could work, but now that's more relevant than ever before. We sometimes find that some pieces in our home are places where we fit our entire day. A table might be the place where we work, where we play, where we eat at the end of the day. And honestly, if we had to, we might even sleep underneath the table. Then we've looked at a place to reflect on our journey. Even the most avid collector of masks, and I hope you enjoyed this animation, has worked out that they need to collect a new type of mask, one that they never thought they would be able to include in their collection. And I think this last 4 months have been full of these kinds of surprises. All of us have wanted to escape, and so here we have on the left sofa 8, trying to escape on a lovely daydream. And I won't ruin the rest of the I'll let you where it could. Many people who is also a place to celebrate. We can do it at home the same way as we did with our friends and our family in other venues. And last but not least, we all want this to end. We might be patient, but we know that our life will return to normal. And that's where we created the last animation, A Place to Rise, just to remind us that this will come to an end. Now, the cat, which appears in almost all the animations, is the extra character, as our furniture are the main characters in each one of these stories. But the cat is a good metaphor, because I'm told that cats are the boss and they don't really like us at home, although they need us at home. And, when the change happened, the domestic cat, was suddenly surprised by the presence of his or her masters at home all day, and that annoyed him. But the cat is also incredibly versatile. A great hunter. If there isn't food, they'll go out and find a mouse. And so it's a great reminder of how we resist change, but also embrace it. In fact, the only thing that we can take for granted is that change is sure to happen. All right, so now I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you go and see the animations. And if you like them, please tell our friends at Proof, and please tell us. We'd love to hear from you. So 6 minutes of creativity, which we put together with the help of 4 artists in Lisbon who worked under the conditions that you and I know well, far apart from each other, lots of Zoom calls, a lot of work done on the computer, and no in-face meetings. It was a real challenge, but it was nice to overcome it. Now let's move on to the next part of our presentation. I want to share with you the first ever Portuguese designer that we've worked with. It is nice, and this feels more relevant than ever, to have someone who works with us and yet who is just a mere 2 hours away from our factory. That's the distance between Lisbon and where we work. And if you think about it, we've never felt the pressure to go and engage someone who comes from our home country. When I look at design and I look at designers, I do believe in serendipity. You do walk around, you do meet people. It doesn't matter where they come from. And if you have a good connection, and if you believe in them, then you should work with them. So there was no pressure to look for someone that was from our home country. But little did we know how useful it would be at a time like this. So Manuel is an architect, and we've been preparing you for him for about 2 years. I'm going to come back to the slide in a second, but I want to jump over to his projects. Portuguese architecture has had a good 70 years. For a small country, only twice the size of Singapore. The architects from that country have achieved projection way beyond what we could have ever dreamed. And it all is traced back to a man who started his work in the 50s, a man called Álvaro Siza, who has become well known amongst the architectural community around the world. And Siza was the first Portuguese architect to win the Pritzker Prize. So it's an honor which I think all of us in a small country treat as if it was our own. Now, Siza is a significant teacher, and he taught a first generation of architects in the early 60s. And then you have a second group of people who went to college in the 80s who are heavily influenced by him, but in a way already set apart from him. And so that third generation, I think, is really exciting. And Manuel is the leading member of that group of people, all of them born in the 60s and the 70s, and now with successful practices. Manuel has been very lucky to concentrate on designing homes and has the good fortune of telling his customers what he's going to do. And the end result is that every project that he has created is unique. And the reason for that is because he's extremely interested in the culture of a place, the history of a place, the story of a place. And he really wants to work with that. And that makes the project unique to that location. But at the same time, he really believes in reflecting the needs of his client. And so once you combine all those factors, you end up with a true one-off story. And that resonated very, very, very much with ourselves. Over the last 3 years, we've released what we call books. These are, you could call them catalogs if you want, but we've poured so much love and tender care into them, photographing Portuguese homes and interviewing people that we thought were relevant and interesting for you to learn about. And so the 3 books are color-coded, and in each one, we featured a home designed by Manuel. In our latest book, the Green Book, Volume 3, we featured his home in Lisbon, an 18th century home, which he renewed completely. Earlier in Book 2, which is pink in color, we shared a project, a small hotel called Santa Clara, also in Lisbon, that he designed. Much of the photography focused on the detailing. I think there's almost as much photographs of the details of the project as there is of our own furniture. And I think it's an excellent way to learn more about Manuel. And last but not least, Book 1, which is ochre in color. Book 1 featured a rural home in the south of Portugal, absolutely magnificent landscape. And that's why I've decided to show you this photograph rather than a close-up shot of the home. I'll let you guys do your own research in your own time. When we release our products on the 10th, you will find additional photography on our website, and I'm sure our friends at Proof will be able to refer to images to you if you need it. So what kind of project would we create with a friend down in Lisbon? And a man that we had grown to know well over 2 years. I think if you look at Manuel's detailing, you look at his visual language, it is one where simplicity rules. So very elaborate simplicity are wrong or inappropriate. It just means that we're glad that we can go back to a place where the most exquisite detail is what matters. And the proportion and the beauty of the material is the most important thing. So that was the heart of the project that we wanted to add of our own. And this is the way we look at wood. For turning what is a plank into a brick, into a Lego brick, which we then machine and turn into pieces of furniture. By the time the wood becomes a Lego brick, it remains still a highly individual thing, but it is divorced from the tree that it once was. In a way, we've turned it into something that could be a bar of metal, a bar of copper, a bar of steel. I mean, in this case, in our case, it might be a bar of walnut or a bar of oak or ash. And so that the connection with the tree is up to a point lost, even though every single piece that is made from those units is unique. And so we wanted to go back, despite being today a factory with 70 people, we wanted to keep ourselves honest. We wanted to work in a way that reminded us how things were when we started. And these photographs are mine. They were taken in October of last year. So forgive me if they're not as professional or as competent as you would expect. But I wasn't really thinking of this keynote when I took these pictures. I was doing my job. It had rained all night. The skies had cleared in Porto early in the morning, which was lovely. We went out into the yard. It was just sufficiently cold for us to want a jacket. And we looked at these beautiful 12 logs that we had brought from France. These logs are 12 meters long. And as we looked carefully at them, we looked at the lower 4 meters and said, this part of the tree really wants to be something. In a way, we're asking the tree what it wants to become. And so those outstanding 4 meters, and they're outstanding because the lower part of the tree is free of large branches and therefore the knots that come with them. Those 4 meters were set aside to make a table. And this is our input. In a way, the project that we have with Manuel involves looking every 6 months at this log and working out how to get something else out of the rest of the log. So we still have 8 meters to go. And we have wood which is different and changes as we rise up the log. And the challenge for us and for Manuel is to find pieces of furniture that are suitable for every single bit of this beautiful raw material. In this case, we're working with Douglas fir, which is a wood or tree that is native to the western or the northwest of the United States or British Columbia and Canada. This is an outstandingly beautiful tree. It grows to 50, 60, 70 meters in height in the wild over 200 or 300 year lifespan. It can look a redwood or a young sequoia in the eye. This tree was brought to Europe so that people could make masts for ships. And now, as you can imagine, that use is no longer as current or relevant as it was in the mid 19th century. So people have been using this wood for both construction and flooring. But I think, as you'll see in a second, it makes a truly interesting wood for when it comes to furniture making. Now, as we flat sawed, we cut through this trunk, we looked at every single plank, we photographed it, we documented it, I took notes to make sure that I understood the characteristics of each plank, we numbered them, and so in a way, when you look at the furniture that we're going to show you, there's a direct connection to the photographs that I have here in a way which I think you don't entirely perceive when you see other Espada pieces. And I want to remind you, we've made this furniture in exactly the same place as the furniture that we make and that you guys know well. So the end result is a slightly pink wood with a grain that looks like it's been hand painted. It is absolutely fabulous grain. And the product that we release is Table 1, which is an exercise in proportion and subtle detailing. So the photograph, I think, that speaks volumes, it is made out of 2/4 knot, which you can see on the leg. We are keeping the knots in the timber here. We're going to lock them with transparent resin so that they don't fall out. We're obviously not going to put giant knots. I think where possible, we will select, but the knots are going to be a feature of the product the same way that the grain is. And I want you just to look at the end grain. Because Douglas fir has got very clear growth rings, you can see immediately, as if someone again had drawn them in. You can count the years that it takes for a plank like this to grow. You know, viewed from here, that's at least 30 years of the life of a tree to achieve a plank of that thickness. So I hope you like Table 1. It is the beginning of an exercise that will keep us busy over the next 2 or 3 years. And it is, I think, a way of introducing you to a very, very interesting person, a truly outstanding architect that I think is going to receive even greater recognition over the next few years. Here we have Table 1 with 5 duet chairs, our widest chair, along the side of the table. So you can imagine with a more conventional chair, 40, 45 centimeters wide, you can easily get 6 people to sit along the side of the table, and there will be obviously space for people at the ends. We will be offering the table in 2 more sizes. And to start, we will launch it only in Douglas fir. It is intimately connected to the discussion that we've had with Manuel, and we'd like to keep it this way. So I hope you get to see the product sometime soon, and please do let us know if you have any questions. Now let's move on quickly to Neri&Hu, which forms the second part of this product launch. I don't think I need to introduce him too much. I did meet him 9 years ago when we started dating, as I call it, and 7 years ago we started releasing products, and I still think we have the largest portfolio of products designed by them compared to any other company. I'm very pleased, for example, that this year they have released products with Casina. I think it is a true milestone in the career of any industrial designer, but I remain very pleased that we are probably their most significant partner in terms of development of products. And I think that allows us the confidence to carry out an exercise like the one that we did. We're not going to dazzle you with novelty here. We're going to hopefully impress you with our ability to go back and review things and bring out ideas that perhaps were deemed not relevant or not possible when they first came out. I think this is an excellent way of working rather than filling the world with more and more junk. We need sometimes to go back and perfect what we have. And in this particular case, I'm going to share with you a product which we call the Solo Vitrine, but which is now available in the size that it was actually born in. The reason we didn't release this version in 2018 has to do with a very tight curvature of the glass on the sides. We produce a mold, we actually have very significant mold making skills, and we delivered it to our friend, local glass blower that we have near the factory. And this gentleman worked in order to curve glass over this mold. Now he found it difficult at first, and so we didn't dare show him the larger version. For 2 years, he's worked successfully on the standard piece, which we have currently in our catalog. And recently we took back the original double the size mold, and he looked at it and said, okay, now I can do this. And we're very, very happy that he could, because when you look at this piece, it has a different character compared to the product that we released in 2018. If you think about it, this cabinet, 1.65 meters tall, looks you in the eye. And all kinds of detailing that were relevant and important in the original cabinet, but perhaps not perceived, are now clearly visible. If you look carefully, the glass shelves look like they're floating. They're not bonded or fixed to the sides of the vitrine. There's a tiny gap that separates them. And so you're left wondering how they're held in place. And the answer obviously lies in this image here, where you can see some very, very subtle fixing points that hide between the posts or behind the posts that are the principal frame of this cabinet. But you know, when you look at this vitrine from head on, as most people will, you don't see it. And I think that this is an excellent way of how revisiting a design allows you the opportunity to get the best out of it. And sometimes that does take a bit longer than you expect, particularly when you're dealing with things that are new and unexpected, like the curved glass sheet. Right, let me move on to the next product. I think it's really relevant product, despite its unappealing name. A bedside chest probably makes people roll their eyes and say, oh no, not again. But I have to tell you, it is very difficult to get the small pieces right. In many cases, they're a large piece shrunk down, and something doesn't go entirely right when that process happens. You know, it does the job. It has perhaps features that connect it to other products, but somehow it doesn't feel right. But when Lyndon and Rosanna put this drawing in front of us, I looked at the base, I looked at the size of the box, I looked at the shape of the rectangle that forms the drawer, and I thought to myself, this piece is like a little dumpling. It feels just right. The relationship between all the different dimensions are spot on. And I think that's a tribute to a skill that I think Lyndon and Rosanna have got built into them, the ability to pick the right proportion and shape for a piece of furniture. And not every designer has that, because some people will look at detailing. Some people will look at other features that are important in furniture. But Lyndon and Rosanna consistently get proportion right. And so here we have the Solo bedside table, probably the nicest, smallest piece of furniture that we've ever made. And here's a nice detail. It is ironic that it's exactly like the very first cabinet that we made 20 years ago. If you look at this photograph, there's a top which is made out of solid wood. There's a base which is made out of solid wood. And then there are these posts that sit in the corners and connect them. And between the posts sit panels, both on the sides and the back. And in the open face would go a drawer or a door. This way of constructing cabinets is comfortably 150 years old. We didn't invent it. We were just following in a long tradition of post and frame cabinetry. And it's nice to see someone who is rooted in the 21st century, designing for today, is also sympathetic to this approach and has returned to it. So it's a real pleasure to share this piece with you. Now let's move on. Just a quick aside. Black Whale Dash is a wood that I'm incredibly fond of. If you guys begin to read me well, you could see me talk a lot about Douglas fir and about that hand-painted grain. Of course, no hand painted it. I think God above or some other power was responsible for that grain. But here with Black Whale Dash, we take a wood which usually is pale and where the grain isn't as visible as you would expect. And the black whale pulls that grain out. And again, you get this almost figurative line drawing on the timber. So I just want to share this material with you and remind you that every single product we make is available in Black Whale Dash as well. Now, let's look at the Solo 4-door cabinets. We're making good progress. I'm right on schedule. Incredibly pleased with myself. And let's hope I don't get distracted and ruin things now as we go on the final stretch. We have to go back to 2018. 2018 was the very first moment where we introduced pieces of furniture accompanied by dramatic performance. And there was such interest in the different elements of the dramatic performance and in that type of communication, that amongst the 14 pieces that we showed in that apartment, there were one or two that sat quietly in a corner. And I'll have to confess, when I was putting together the two-door solo cabinet, I did look at it. And I know it's a bad moment to ask it questions, but I did say, what are you for? It was a two-door cabinet, a small sideboard with two shelves in it. I wasn't entirely sure, to tell the truth. The reason we got so enthusiastic about that piece was that it gave us a chance to look at this handle, this beautiful handle, which we had machined out of solid brass that Lyndon Rossana designed. You could almost say that we built a cabinet in order to show you a handle. And that's not really a good reason to bring out a product. So we had to go back to it. And we have been lucky enough to share that cabinet with different people around the world. But I think reviewing the piece and showing you more options is a way of drawing your attention to a piece that deserves, a little bit more of your time. And the answer was to develop a line of four-door cabinets. Now, I want to remind you that you can tailor every single piece that we make. And so in a way, when we show you a shape or a size, you are probably thinking of how you could adapt it for the needs that you have. But I think it is within our power to suggest things, to suggest sizes. And in fact, it's our responsibility, because if you don't see it, it's hard sometimes to believe it. And so with a four-door cabinet, we've been lucky enough to work with Lyndon and Rossana to show you two very different proportions. A much taller cabinet at 1 meter in height, kind of piece of furniture that your granny might have had. You can almost imagine the mirror above this cabinet in the formal dining room, the room that you almost never went into, because if you went into that, you might be told off for scratching something or damaging something. This kind of cabinet has huge presence. It holds your attention because it's that big, taller. It's almost the kind of thing that we would expect to see at a counter in a restaurant, but instead it can occupy a really important place in a home. But rest assured, we still have the conventional 80 centimeter tall sideboard, which is almost a mid-century icon available for you to show to your clients or for you to enjoy yourself. Now, what are the features that we are carrying over in this line? The handle was something very important to us, and I want you just to look at it. It looks like a loop of brass, but it isn't. If you get closer, you realize that the inner part of the loop is not as large as the outer loop, and so therefore the loop itself narrows, which is great. It means that you don't get to put your whole hand through that handle. All you need to do is just grasp it with your fingers and pull the cabinet door. So I think it's important to draw your attention to that. We've also gone back and inserted cable management, both behind the shelves and also into the base of the cabinet, so that you can place the cabinet somewhere and not deface the back or the side panels with access compartments. And that allows you to put any kind of electronics inside this cabinet as you see fit. As the pieces got bigger, then the subtle detail like white foot levelers are incredibly important, because larger pieces need to sit perfectly level on the floor that you place them. And that's why these cabinets now come with feet leveling. And then we went back and looked at all kinds of tiny details. I could bore you with many of them. So I'm just gonna pull out one to give you insight into the way we think. The original magnets on this cabinet sat on an independent piece of wood. The sole purpose of that piece of wood was to hold those magnets, and it did the job perfectly well. But it wasn't seamless. It felt like there was something extra there in the cabinet, that it felt almost like an afterthought that we'd put into the piece. We had just remembered in the last minute, how are we going to hold the doors? Oh, let's put this extra piece of wood here. So we weren't thinking that way, but we went back, we looked at the piece, and we said, if we carve into the base panel and into the top panel of cabinet, and we create a recess, and we insert the magnets into there, we can achieve the same function. And the result is seamless. So this is exactly what we've done. But now you'll understand why we went through this trouble. Allow me to introduce you to the removable drawer. Now, you're more than entitled to say those look like trays. And you're right. They're both things. And allow me to explain how this works. Inside those shelves, which are now completely adjustable, lies a lattice of metal strips. And inside those trays sit 4 magnets. And the result is that each tray knows where it belongs. As you present the tray towards the cabinet, don't worry, you don't get dragged into it by powers of magnetic attraction. But as you place the tray on the shelf, the tray itself will gently tug and tell you where it needs to go. And therefore, it has a feature which is characteristic of a drawer, where we have the drawer in place and we can pull it out and we know that we can get it back to the same place. Now, what excites us here is that we see this cabinet as something that you can then tailor, customize, so that the cabinet does exactly what you need. To do that, we developed 4 different sizes of tray. I'll show you them in a second, but I want you to look at the detailing of these pieces. They're exactly like the cabinet, the same base made out of solid wood, shaped and carved along all edges, and then the same posts. If you think about it, we could have avoided all this trouble by making a much simpler product. But the tray is in essence a mini cabinet, which you then can carry and take somewhere else. We've developed a group of inserts, the first one which is being released on the 10th of July. And as you can see, the inserts can be dropped into the larger trays and they turn them into functional objects that have a specific purpose. Now we're looking forwards to bringing out something that can keep your socks or your whiskey glasses or your ties or your wine glasses and obviously your cutlery. And if you can think of anything else, do drop us a note and we will probably develop an insert for that purpose. The end result, though, is, let me show you all 4 sizes. You can configure the internal parts of this cabinet, either with trays / drawers that fill the entire compartment or that occupy only a part of it. Let me show you a photograph that will speak volumes. Here you have a taller tray, suitable for objects that you need a little bit of support from the sides, and a shallower tray that only occupies 1/2 of the compartment, and then a deeper tray for things that you might want to keep out of sight. So think about it. This is a cabinet where you will never have to struggle to find that sock that went right down the back of the drawer that you can't reach, because you can pull that drawer out. But this is also a cabinet where you can place everything you need to serve your guests, and you can just pull it out and take it over to the table for them to use. So I hope you enjoy this attention to detail. And as you can imagine, the 2-door cabinet, that poor quiet thing that sat quietly in amongst all that performance, has also been completely updated, has the same structure of metal inside the shelves, it has the cable management, everything that I told you about is now present in the 2-door version. Finally, and I'll be very brief because we're coming to the end, we have a product that goes back 3 years. I'm going to speed through this, but it is a very iconic sofa designed by Linden and Rosanna. It reminds me personally of the LC2, but there is something here which I think is quite different. Linden and Rosanna speak a lot about tectonics in architecture. This is a difficult word. I think we're mainly used with the geological kind of definition of tectonics, of plates rubbing against each other and causing earthquakes. But in architecture, tectonics is a word that defines or describes the art of putting things together, of building things, and often is used as a manner of allowing the building to explain itself to people that occupy it, explain how it works, explain how it is built. It's a way of conceptualizing certain details that people see in the building. And here you have the corner, which is often missed, of the frame of this sofa. And to me, it reminds me of Japanese temple, where the different parts of wood lap on top of each other. And if you look carefully, you can understand the structure. The structure is made out of 3 main parts, the X, Y, and Z axis. And you have these posts and these beams, and you have the beams that run along the sofa, and they all lock together to form a sturdy base. And I think that's a detail that you can see here that explains exactly how it is constructed. And to make the sofa more versatile, and I think this drawing, you'll see on the 10th when we release images of the modular system, but this drawing speaks volumes. You can take a very, very simple modular system and create almost anything, from the infinite sofa using the armless module to one that has wood arms. And if you convert the trays and place them at the ends, at the open ends, they become arms. And finally, you have day beds and 1-arm sofa to create a complete modular system. So to wrap up, the largest ever object that Espada's ever created, 3.80 meters, 1 meter long. The smallest, cutest piece I think we have, the solo bedside table, and 3 very important additions to the solo family, which I think now numbers 15 pieces. But I think this is a perfect example of how it's important to go back. go see us on Instagram, say something nice. I hope you enjoyed the animations. They're still there. If you haven't seen them, you can, it's almost as exciting as during the launch week. And do let us know what your favorite is. I've got to tell you though, if Instagram is a form of running an online election, then my favorite is actually the least popular one. So I'm not going to tell you which one it is, but go out and vote for them and make me feel a little bit happier. I still love it. I don't believe in popularity contests, but I am surprised that other illustrations and animations, which I didn't think I didn't have the same affection for, have done better. Now, see you in September, and I'm going to switch off the screen share so that we can deal with any questions that come up.
Okay, thank you so much, Luis, for this
welcome.
Beautiful presentation. I was so happy personally to see the solo vitrine making a new comeback, just a little taller. We do have the solo vitrine like here in Ion, so that actually almost felt like
I think
home.
it's very, very easy to judge how it looks from the original vitrine, but I think the new one has a presence that's hard to perceive until you see it in person.
And now we're just going to move on to the question. And just because one of the questions that we receive, it is, what is your favorite piece of furniture? Since you're kind of hinting into that, I'm going to start with that one. So I guess you have no escape. You do have to answer that question.
Oh boy, you didn't prepare me for this. That's not fair. What is my favorite piece of furniture? I have a problem where we have currently 7 designers in our stable. And if I, and this is being recorded, so this could be used against me in the future. My favorite piece of furniture. Oh golly, you know what? It's a solo chair. Let's get it out there. It is a chair that references a certain mid-century piece, designed by Charles and Ray Eames, but I think it has huge personality with the wood base that Linda Rossana put into it. So I think I'm going to go with that. But I'm entitled to change my mind from time to time, right?
Sure. That was just for right now, at this moment. Another question that we have is, what is the inspiration behind opening the La Espada?
Oh, it was, you remember, I made a reference to serendipity. It was an accident. I'm an engineer by training. I'm not a designer by training. I'm not a woodworker by training. All those things are self-taught. And so if I go back 20 years ago, it could be summarized as boy meets girl, and boy decides that furniture is the way to keep girl interested, and the rest is history. So it was an inspiration. It was more about wanting to do something, wanting to make something. And I think that's why we got deeply involved with having a tiny workshop, as well as designing and making our furniture from the beginning. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Please keep the questions coming. The number is 9176391. So now we're going to move to the next one, which is, tell us about Tales from Strange Times.
Oh, it's a fun project because we had to move on from the very intimate and kind of in-person events that we've been running. We wanted to create a sense of occasion, but we also wanted a project so that sense of occasion means that you go and see one thing and then you say, I want to see more. I want to see more. If you think about it, our dramatic performances are usually 1 hour long, and they really hold people in place. And it's very difficult to repeat that online. And that's why we came up with the idea of these tiny episodes that you could digest one by one as the days went along. But we also wanted to talk about what was happening now. It's just such a kind of crazy moment that is impossible to avoid it, as I mentioned in my presentation. And then everything we do has to work on many levels. I think La Espada probably is actually poetry in motion. You can look at us and say, this is just furniture and woodworking. But then there's other messages that we build into our brand and into the way we speak. And with Tales from Strange Times, we wanted to remind our friends who saw it of a very curious aspect of La Espada. If you think about it, the animations are designed in 3D in computers. But then if you look carefully at those animations and you squint, you begin to see these lovely little details. And every surface there has been hand painted. In fact, one of the artists that we worked with was a painter. And so whilst his colleagues were working on the computer side of the project, He was hand painting all kinds of surfaces and textures, including the Douglas fir, which you see in one of the animations. And so that mix of handwork and machine work is the Espada. And that hopefully gives you an insight into how we think when we organize an event like this. We want to communicate with you on a basic level, the story, right? But then we want to be able to elaborate and explain all these beautiful little surprises that are hiding within the project itself.
Once again, thank you very much. Thank you everyone who has joined us today. We really look forward to welcome you now to our showroom. And we're really touched that you've participated to 3 of our webinars that we've done over the past few months. We thank you for your loyalty and for patronizing our store. Have a good day, everyone.
And for me, thank you for joining us. And thank you, Proof, for making this occasion possible. Very well. It's time to say goodbye.
Yes, thank you.
See you guys. Have a good day.
Bye.